The Wiseguy cast is almost unrecognizable in 2026. Two of the 8 actors in this story are gone, and one death came with a $52 million lawsuit attached. Another cast member stood trial in a real courtroom. What happened to these people defies belief. Number 1 is the man who wore the wire, Ken Wahl, and even his birthday is a mystery. Records checked by the CBS publicist during the show's run pointed to February 14, 1957, which would make him 69 today. But Wahl has spent decades politely refusing to confirm anything, and other dates float through old press clippings like rumors he never bothered to kill. What is certain is Chicago, the 9th of 11 children in a blue-collar German and Italian family, a motorcycle crash at 16 that wrecked his knee, and a drift to Los Angeles where he scraped by as a movie extra, standing in crowds for pictures like The Buddy Holly Story, until director Philip Kaufman cast him in The Wanderers and made him a star in 1979. Studio work followed fast. Fort Apache, The Bronx opposite Paul Newman, The Soldier, a famously miserable pairing with Bette Midler and Jinxed, but nothing fit him the way an undercover agent named Vinnie Terranova eventually would. Wahl played Vinnie as a Brooklyn guy with a conscience, a man who kept falling for the criminals he was sent to destroy, and audiences felt every betrayal land in his chest. The role brought him an Emmy nomination in 1989 and the Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Television Drama in January 1990, the highest honors the show ever collected. Within months, he was gone. Wahl insisted that executive producer Stephen J. Cannell fired him. Cannell told reporters he still wanted Wahl on the show and that the actor had written asking out. Whatever the truth, Wahl called the planned 4th season ridiculous, an action cartoon replacing the character-driven series he loved, and he never played Vinnie again except for one reunion movie. Then came August 1992, and a flight of marble stairs at the home of Rodney Dangerfield's future wife. Wahl fell, broke his neck, damaged his spine, and watched a surgery he calls botched turn his body into a life sentence of pain. A pair of forgettable films and one Wiseguy reunion movie later, he retired in 1996, and the disappearing act was total. His first marriage to former Penthouse Pet of the Year Corinne Alphen had ended in 1991, leaving him a son, Raymond, and a stepson, Louis. In 2009, he sued his own former business manager, alleging the man had conspired with Alphen to drain him. He has been married to Shane Barbie, of the Barbie twins, since 1997, and he has described the dark stretch after the injury in his own words: 7 years of feeling useless, wrapped in hopelessness, telling God he felt like a worthless piece of garbage. What pulled him back was a statistic he heard in 2013. 22 American veterans dying by suicide every day. He now pairs rescue animals with veterans fighting PTSD, arguing from his own experience that a creature who needs you can hold a broken person to the earth. 3 years before that, in January 2010, he made the strangest headline of his life, offering up the Golden Globe itself, the trophy for playing Vinnie, as reward money to catch the person who glued a 7-month-old cat named Timothy to a Minnesota highway where the animal later died. Vinnie Terranova risked everything for strangers and got nothing back but scars. Ken Wahl handed away the proof of his stardom to avenge a cat, and by every account he considered it a bargain. The second name on this list died the way his character lived, leaving damage in every direction. Ray Sharkey was Sonny Steelgrave, the Atlantic City mob boss of the show's first great arc, a killer so charming that a generation of viewers rooted against the FBI. Sharkey came out of Red Hook, Brooklyn, raised by his mother after his father walked out when the boy was 5, and he chose acting after watching Jack Lemmon in Days of Wine and Roses. Training at the HB studio led to a move west in 1973 and a film debut alongside the young toughs of the Lords of Flatbush, and by 1981 he had a Golden Globe for playing a ruthless star maker in The Idolmaker, plus a $400 a day heroin habit to go with it. The needle never really let him go. Overdoses piled up, along with 4 drug-related car crashes and 2 rounds of microsurgery on his eyes, and rehab after rehab failed to hold. On screen, his ending became television history. Cornered in a locked movie theater with the agent who betrayed him, Sonny says, "I loved you, man. then throws himself against the electrical switchboard. Entertainment Weekly later ranked the unnominated performance among the biggest Emmy snubs ever recorded. Off-screen, something far darker was already inside him. Sharkey had contracted HIV through intravenous drug use and was diagnosed in the late 1980s, and his own manager later admitted the diagnosis was hidden to protect his career, and that Sharkey went on sleeping with women, roughly 100 of them by the manager's estimate, telling no one. A young actress named Elena Monica tested positive in 1991 and sued him for $52 million. His response, on the record, was chilling. He mused that the disease was funny, that a person is negative one day and positive the next, and that he did not believe she had suffered because of him. A second woman, a Beverly Hills designer, tested positive in 1992 and still helped nurse him at the end. Arrested for cocaine and heroin possession in Vancouver in July 1992, he was fired from his new series, The Hat Squad, and the industry was finished with him except for one last family comedy, Cop and a Half, released in the spring he was dying. 2 marriages had already collapsed under the drugs. Rebecca Wood left in 1986, and Carol Graham, mother of his daughter Cecilia, filed in November 1992 citing the same poison. The little girl was 4 when her father gave a final interview in March 1993, weighing 80 pounds, still insisting the virus inside him would never become AIDS. 3 months later, on June 11, 1993, he died of AIDS complications at Lutheran Medical Center in Brooklyn, 40 years old, back in the borough that built him. He lies in St. Charles Cemetery in Farmingdale, Long Island. Monica won her lawsuit by default after his death and collected nothing because nothing was left. Sonny Steelgrave grabbed the switches so he would never have to answer for his crimes. Ray Sharkey never answered for his either. The people he hurt were left holding the verdict. Sonny Steelgrave remains the villain fans defend 40 years later, and the man who played him left real victims behind. Can you still watch the performance the same way? Tell us in the comments where you land. At number 3, the story finally turns kind. Jonathan Banks was Frank McPike, the sour, penny-pinching FBI handler with a razor for a mouth, the bureaucrat who complained about expense reports and then quietly burned every rule to keep his agent alive. Banks grew up in Chilham, Maryland, raised by a mother who worked as a secretary, including for Admiral Chester Nimitz, before becoming a professor, and the work ethic she modeled never left him. At Indiana University, he acted alongside a classmate named Kevin Kline in The Threepenny Opera, then left without a degree and drove to Los Angeles in 1974 to begin 20 years of anonymous, excellent work in whatever television would have him. Wiseguy earned him an Emmy nomination in 1989. Hollywood shrugged and went back to casting him as thugs and heavies, and Banks kept working anyway, one craggy character at a time, until 2009, when a show called Breaking Bad handed him a quiet fixer named Mike Ehrmantraut. The role made him world-famous in his 60s. Better Call Saul kept him on screen for 61 of its 63 episodes, and he now holds 6 Emmy nominations across 3 different series, with 0 wins, a losing streak he wears like one of McPike's cheap suits. No other performer has ever collected Emmy nominations as a main cast supporting actor across 3 separate shows, and he managed it moving between lawmen and criminals on either side of the same badge. Married to Jenna since 1990 after a brief first marriage that gave him a daughter, he raised fraternal twins and a stepdaughter with her, collected an honorary doctorate from Indiana University in 2016, the school he once left without a degree, and lost his home in the 2018 Woolsey fire, and simply kept going. In May 2025, producers announced a Wiseguy feature film, and the one original cast member confirmed to return as Banks, reprising Frank McPike more than 3 decades after cancellation, at 79 years old. Frank McPike was underestimated by every person who ever walked into his office. Jonathan Banks waited half a lifetime for the world to catch up, then outlasted every single doubter. The next name built the most frightening villain this series ever aired, then spent his 60s inside real courtrooms on 2 continents, and walked out of the last one free on his own birthday. Kevin Spacey was a 28-year-old unknown from the New York stage, trained at Juilliard and seasoned in stand-up comedy, when Wiseguy handed him Mel Prophet, a drug and arms kingpin who ran a global empire like a brilliant, spoiled, terrifying child, with his sister Susan as the only person he trusted alive. The arc is still cited as the show's high watermark. Trade papers have called it the role that put him on the map, and it launched everything. 2 Academy Awards. For The Usual Suspects in American Beauty, a decade-running London's Old Vic Theatre from 2004 to 2015, the presidency on House of Cards. A Tony Award had already arrived on Broadway in 1991, and a Golden Globe for House of Cards would follow in 2015. Behind the Polish sat a childhood he kept sealed for 60 years. Testifying under oath in 2022, Spacey described his father as a white supremacist and neo-Nazi who forced the children to sit through hours of lectures and said the shame of that house taught him to keep everything hidden. The hiding ended in 2017 when allegations of misconduct detonated his career in a single week. Netflix cut him from House of Cards, and his finished performance in All the Money in the World was erased and reshot with Christopher Plummer. Then came the courtrooms. A New York jury rejected a $40 million civil claim in 2022. In London, he faced 9 criminal charges brought by 4 men, and on July 26, 2023, his 64th birthday, the jury at Southwark Crown Court acquitted him on every count while he wept in the dock. Vindication arrived with a bill attached. Spacey has said he owes many millions in legal fees. His $6 million Baltimore mansion was foreclosed and sold in 2024, and he told an interviewer in 2025 that he was living in hotels, performing wherever anyone would have him. A cabaret night in Cyprus, an Italian streaming comedy called Mini Market. The last 3 civil claims against him were settled confidentially in March 2026. He is 66 now, a 2-time Oscar winner with no fixed address. Mel Prophet commanded an empire from a yacht and trusted no one. Kevin Spacey ended up trusting audiences again, one small stage at a time with everything else in storage. Number 5 never needed a stunt double for the hardest thing that ever happened to him. Jim Byrnes played Lifeguard, the wheelchair-using ex-agent on the other end of Vinnie's phone line. The gravel voice that logged every code word and talked undercover men through nights when their cover was 1 sentence from collapse. The wheelchair was real. Byrnes was drafted out of St. Louis in 1968 and served a year in Vietnam with the 196th Infantry Brigade, only to meet catastrophe back on this continent. On February 26, 1972, on a dark stretch of highway near Parksville, British Columbia, he stopped to help push a stranger's stalled truck and was struck by a passing car. Both legs were amputated. He was 23. Instead of disappearing, he settled in Vancouver and became a blues musician. And by his own often-told account, the call offering him Wiseguy came on February 26, 1987, 15 years to the day after the accident. Everything since reads like a reward the man earned twice. He spent 6 years and 97 episodes as Joe Dawson, the whiskey-voiced keeper of secrets on Highlander, has won 3 Juno Awards for blues albums recorded across 3 different decades, and holds membership in both the Order of Canada and the Order of British Columbia, a St. Louis draftee whom Canada formally decorated twice. Kwantlen Polytechnic University handed him an honorary degree in 2023, one more institution lining up to thank a man the road nearly killed at 23. His wife, Robin, whose first date with him was December 8, 1983, works in public health. Their daughter, Caitlin, studied film at the University of British Columbia. At 77, he is still in Vancouver, still singing, still acting, and universities keep handing him honorary degrees for the way he has lived. Lifeguard sat at a desk because the script said the field had cost him his legs. Jim Byrnes lost his for real, helping a stranger in the dark, and then outsang, outworked, and outlived most of the business that hired him. If these stories are why you are here, subscribe. The classic crime casts we cover next come with files every bit as heavy as this one. Number 6 is the entry nobody saw coming in 1988 because the scariest thing this show ever did was hand a dramatic role to a clown. Jerry Lewis, the Jerry Lewis, half of Martin and Lewis, the telethon host, the king of slapstick, arrived in Season 2 as Eli Sternberg, a garment manufacturer 40 years in the rag trade who borrows $2 million from a mob loan shark and cannot pay it back. Critics were stunned. The Washington Post said he moved through the drama with a strangely imposing stature. Viewers who expected pratfalls got a desperate old man drowning in debt, and many still call it the finest acting of his life. The life itself held more weight than any script. Born Joseph Levitch in Newark in 1926 to vaudeville parents, his father a master of ceremonies, his mother a radio pianist, he was expelled from school in the 9th grade, met Dean Martin in 1945, debuted with him at Atlantic City's 500 Club in 1946, and became half of the biggest act in America until the partnership shattered at the Copacabana 10 years later, almost to the day. 16 films came out of the act before it broke apart, and Lewis later logged a record 52 guest hosting turns on The Tonight Show across his solo career. Privately, he carried a 13-year addiction to the painkiller Percodan after a 1965 back injury, an addiction he confessed to publicly and said he finally broke in 1978, along with 3 heart attacks spread across 5 decades. His first marriage to singer Patty Palmer produced 6 sons and lasted 35 years before she filed for divorce. His second, to Sandy Pitnick in 1983, brought an adopted daughter Danielle and lasted until the end. The end came at home in Las Vegas on August 20th, 2017, age 91, end-stage cardiac disease. He was cremated. Then the will was read, and the punchline was ice cold. Everything went to Sandy and Danielle, while all 6 sons from the first marriage were disinherited by name, including Joseph, who had died by suicide 8 years earlier. The Muscular Dystrophy Association had already delivered its own verdict in 2011, dropping him from the telethon he had hosted for 45 years, with no farewell broadcast. Eli Sternberg begged the mob for $2 million to save his family's business. Jerry Lewis died worth a fortune and made certain 6 of his children never touched it. Number 7 walked into the show's final season playing a federal prosecutor while privately fighting the same drug his most famous movie made look like a career plan. Stephen Bauer was born Esteban Ernesto Echeverria Sampson in Havana, and his family fled Castro's Cuba on July 4, 1960, carrying a family history that already included a grandfather who had escaped Nazi Germany. Miami raised him. The bilingual PBS sitcom Que Pasa, USA, discovered him in the late 70s. Scarface immortalized him as Manny, Tony Montana's doomed best friend, and earned him a Golden Globe nomination at 27. It also introduced him to the cocaine culture the film pretended to warn against, a struggle he has discussed openly for years. And the town that applauded the movie kept casting him inside the same drug world it nearly buried him in. When Ken Wahl left Wiseguy, CBS bet the whole series on Bauer as Michael Santana, a Cuban-born U.S. attorney thrown out of the Justice Department and pulled into undercover work. The bet lasted weeks. Buried on Saturday nights, the season was suspended after 11 episodes, and the show was canceled on December 8, 1990, 6 days after Bauer turned 34. His 4 marriages included 8 years with Melanie Griffith, who stood by him through the worst of the drugs. Their son Alexander was born in 1985, and a second son, Dylan, arrived in 1990 during a brief marriage to Ingrid Anderson. In 2010, he made headlines for a crime that never happened. Press reports named him as the driver in a Malibu pedestrian incident before police clarified it was a different man with the same name. He checked himself into rehab as recently as 2016, got sober again, and television rewarded him with a beautiful irony. The man who once played a prosecutor now lounges beside the pool as Don Eladio, the cartel patriarch of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, with 5 seasons as a fixer on Ray Donovan in between. At 69, he is still working constantly. Michael Santana lost his career in the script to other men's crimes. Stephen Bauer nearly lost the real one to his own, and remains the rare Scarface story that ends in survival. Last on the list is the assassin who became America's dad. William Russ played Roger Lukaku, the CIA-trained mercenary inside the Prophet Empire. Golden, laconic, and so quietly lethal that fans spent decades arguing he deserved his own series. Russ came from Portsmouth, Virginia, by way of the University of Michigan, the New York stage, and a turn as pilot Slick Goodland in The Right Stuff. And after Wiseguy, he earned an Independent Spirit Award nomination as a washed-up minor league pitcher in the quiet baseball film Pastime. Then he pulled off the strangest career turn on this list. In 1993, he became Alan Matthews, the gentle father on Boy Meets World, and stayed for 120 episodes, directing 9 of them himself. A generation of kids who trusted his advice about growing up has no idea he spent the late 80s as television's most unnerving hired gun, or that he later played the racist father whose dinner table speech poisons a family in American History X. He returned as Alan on Girl Meets World 2 decades later, becoming the only person to direct episodes of both series, and along the way, he kept dropping into the best dramas on television: The Sopranos, Deadwood, Bosch. At 75, he is still acting, still married to actress Claire Wren, the father of 2 grown children, and cheerfully recording video greetings for fans who mostly want to hear from Mr. Matthews. Roger Lococo could kill a man with a smile and vanish without a trace. William Russ chose the opposite trick. He became so warm and so familiar that nobody remembers he was ever dangerous. Sonny Steelgrave told Vinnie he loved him, then reached for the switches. 39 years later, 6 of these 8 actors are still here to remember the voltage.